This is Root Literacy Design, where we share stories, tips, and tools for educators implementing evidence based literacy. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel so we can keep helping educators like you.
So, welcome to the 4 stages of school-wide literacy implementation. We're excited to be with you today to talk through a free tool that we're offering, which is the school-wide literacy implementation checklist. At the same time, we'll share some stories about our journey on this particular path and invite you to come along with us as we learn more and we share amongst this wonderful literacy community throughout our state and country. So we'll go ahead and kick things off by sharing a little bit about who we are as our first part. We'll create space for thinking about the parts that resonate with you, and then we'll say, what now? What, as we all know, when you attend a professional development session, if you just absorb the information but don't create an action plan related to it, it just sits with you. And the biggest goal is to actually get this work happening in our schools across this space so that we can create a great experience for our learners. So, who we are, my name is Brandy Lepisky, and I am the founder and CVO of Level 5 Leaders. I'm proud to work alongside of Heather Ballantyne and Root Literacy Design. Part of my background is that I've worn many hats, as many educators often have. I started out as a Spanish teacher once upon a time, so literacy in multiple languages has been part of my background. I was in the classroom for a number of years before I switched into an administration role. So I've been both a school principal and a school director. I've worked in urban ring in urban schools and now at the Compass School, which is a statewide charter school located in Kingston, Rhode Island, in a more rural setting. So it's been interesting in terms of my own journey. I've taught high school and middle school. I've been an administrator for elementary, middle, and high. And it's just really been an exciting thing for me to continue on the literacy journey and learn more about the impact that that can have in students' lives at any stage of the game, and the ways that the educators in the sphere can have such an important role to play in the student experience. With that, I'll pass things off to my colleague, Heather Ballantyne.
And I have a much shorter intro. I'm just going to say I'm Heather Ballantyne, the founder and CVO, and you can click the link to learn more about me. We'll share the slide deck with all of you.
Great. All right, so today we're going to talk about the literacy transformation journey. And for administrators, we love for things to happen quickly. And ideally, like 1 to 3 years is kind of our prime and preferred zone. And so the first thing that I'm going to share here, the very first slide, you might be like, oh man, a 6 to 10 year experience. That's at least twice as long as what I had in mind. But having walked this, we're currently in year 5. And so I think that we're on the faster timeline. Of note, we're a single school LEA. And so that has a whole different level of the complex. We're able to cut through a lot of the complexity that goes with larger district implementation. But having walked it, the 5 to 6 years is really the zone that we're in. And when we're looking at all of these different stages of the transformation, they all really do take that many. And when we've talked to other administrators across the country, those who are having the greatest gains are the ones that have committed with 2 feet from the beginning and stuck with it even during all of those times where it felt like, oh, this is the time we take the off ramp. It's too intense. No, we want to pivot to something faster. So the biggest thing that I would say is great stuff takes time, and the biggest part is to do the commitment to the journey all the way through. And then once you get there, when you look back, it'll feel faster than it did from the beginning. As we're reflecting back, we're finishing out our 5th year at the Compass School with this work. And it feels like it's actually been really fast. But at the beginning of this journey, if you had told me, and actually Heather did, that it would take that long, initially that was a deterrent. I was like, no, we need to move fast. So one of the mantras that we've adopted is go slow to go fast. And that's what I would encourage you to think through as you're exploring this journey. Part of the data that I bring to you today is science data. And you might be thinking, Brandy, why are you bringing science data if we're talking about literacy? Well, for those who are familiar with the test, many folks know that the NGSA is really a reading test. You can actually know very little content of science and still demonstrate proficiency on this test if you're able to read, first of all, and think logically. And the reason why I pulled this out is because in Rhode Island we use the RICAS for our ELA assessment, but that is both a reading and a writing test. And so at the Compass School, like I said, we're finishing out stage or year 5 of that journey, and it's been mostly focused on reading. So at this time, I don't feel like we've fully maximized our impact because next year we're launching into some really important writing work. So I would say hold the jury's not yet out on how strong our results can be on the RICAS ELA side. But let's take a look at what's happening for the Compass School on the NGSA science assessment. So the Compass School is in year 5, like we talked about, of this literacy journey. 5th graders and 8th graders statewide take this assessment. And as we're looking through, you'll notice that these are the top 3 performing LEAs on this particular assessment in the most recent school year that we have data for, which is 23-24. And you know you're a Rhode Islander when you can look at any school district and have a sense about their performance based on reputation, because in Rhode Island, everything runs on reputation and what we know about one another. And we know that historically Barrington and East Greenwich have been the highest performers in our state for standardized assessment. And if you look more closely at this, you'll notice that first, if we look at average scale score, so the Compass School was the highest performer there by 2 points ahead of Barrington. When we look at meeting or exceeding expectations, technically when you round up, 65.5 and 65.7 are both 66. But East Greenwich and the Compass School coming in at the top there. But what's even more interesting is just how many students are in that beautiful blue swath of exceeds expectations. And we see that the Compass School has 44.8% of students in that zone. So things that this data tells us is that when you do a huge focus on writing and reading instruction in particular, you see the success come up in multiple measures. In this instance, we're looking at literacy across the content area in science and having this big impact. So really think about it as an investment that will pay dividends in lots of different ways that you can't even necessarily anticipate. And for the Compass School to become one of the highest performers in the state and be able to hang even with the likes of Barrington and East Greenwich, it's a message that anybody who invests in this journey can potentially see these kind of gains. All right, and so the first part, though, is about, being honest about where you are in the journey, taking an assessment, what is our baseline, and assess and set direction. And one of the things that is really the key leader commitment at this stage is address the feelings. Once you get real about where things truly are, people feel protective over that, people feel grief for having not supported their students in the way that they would like to. And the image that we've displayed here is when we asked our 3rd and 4th graders to go ahead and write out the alphabet in first all uppercase letters, then in all lowercase letters, and then to write out the numbers from 0 to 10. And it wasn't until we had every student do that, and then we brought it all together, that we were like, oh, wow, when we put it in black and white like this, we're in a much different spot than we thought that we were back at the beginning of our journey. So Heather was there with our third and fourth grade teachers when they were having that moment. Heather, do you want to share a little bit about that experience?
Yes. So what happened was pretty fascinating. It's very typical of what I see in schools. So teachers often see signs that their students are struggling with reading, and it most teachers can rattle off what they see for you. The kids flip pages, they stare up instead of looking at the page while you're reading. They're not following along. The teacher often reports they're the one that has to do most of the reading in the class. Students aren't able to talk about what they're reading. So I had a teacher who does upper elementary, third and fourth grade, approach me. Her name is Amy. And she said, "Can you come in my room and help me understand what's going on?" And so I went in, I watched, I saw the behavior she flagged for me. I said, "Yes, those are a thing." And I said, "But do you know how to figure out if your students can read or not?" And she was like, "No, but I have this lovely screening data." But I don't know how to use it. And so we looked at it and we talked through the purpose of a screener, which is really to help capture students who are flagging as needing reading support, but it is not intended to tell you why the student can't read or what they're struggling with specifically. So I began training teachers in what are called diagnostics. So if you think like diagnose, is the origin of that word. So when we started looking at specific assessments to figure out exactly what students needed support with, one of them is you can ask students to read and write the alphabet or like identify letters and then write them. And she said at first, I don't think my students are going to need that. They're third and fourth graders. They know the alphabet. And I said, "Okay, like you would know. I don't know what's done here. This is my first year at the Compass School." I was going to tell her. I said, "Okay." She starts doing the other diagnostic tests I gave her, and then she said, "You know what? I need to do it." And so she did it whole class, and only four students could write the alphabet correctly. Everybody else's looked like this. And as Brandy was mentioning, there comes a lot of feelings with this work, so she broke down in tears. She still talks about it today, so I have her permission to share it. And then her team started looking at the diagnostic assessments and uncovering what was going on with students with reading, information that's not in screeners, and they also broke down. And so the work for Brandy and I became, how do we help these folks and how do we help them remove the blame and the guilt and all these things that are rising up for them, and how do we keep them focused on what we really want, which is what do we do about it? Um, so the first stage can feel very heavy when you're doing this work in the schools, and you just have to be prepared to hold space for folks to talk about the feelings that are going to arise, because they will arise for sure.
And sometimes we get inquiry of it how far do we need to go back when we're starting this work? And so you heard of a third grade teacher who was feeling like, we don't need to do the alphabet with third and fourth graders. And sometimes there is information from high school teachers of like, okay, in theory, they have had all of this K-8 experience, but they're coming to me. I know that there's a problem. And we often talk about like go back as far as you can and build it up at each stage. You don't know where the gaps are and what needs to be taught in order for those gaps to be filled until you get real about it. So there you go. And once you start at the beginning, then you know where things are going to go from there. And I'm happy to be able to report that all of our students at this time can do all capital letters, all lowercase letters, and their numbers, starting at a much younger stage. All
Yes.
right. So in this next, we've just captured some of the key quotes that we thought are relevant to share here. And one of the things that we found has been really important when we've talked with other educators is helping them feel like they're not alone, and to recognize that a lot of people have these same realizations and same aha moments. And so first we'll talk about Amy Goldblatt, who's the regular education teacher, saying, "I was struck by the sheer volume spectrum of information pertaining to literacy that I was not aware of, and I didn't know where to begin. And so this is somebody who had gone through a traditional teacher prep program, who had already taught. She was still in the earlier stages of her career, but I would say that she had probably about 4 years of experience at that point,
She
um,
also has her master's degree
and a
in
master's.
education,
Yeah.
and she
And
had it at that point, which she really wants people to know. That, she said even after getting a master's, she still felt like that.
And so for administrators, for us recognizing that folks that are coming in with beautiful pedigree in terms of their resume and their educational experience, likely if they haven't had thoughtful science of reading training and coaching or a practicum to go with it, don't have the information that they need to be successful yet. And recognizing that our role is to really grow educators in the same way that those teachers are growing their students. Another story is from a teacher assistant. So at the Compass School, we chose to have our teacher assistants attend science of reading training and receive coaching, and hold them accountable to the work through different evaluations and observations. And so this is one of our teacher assistants who has earned proficiency, reflecting back that many schools don't offer teacher assistants the opportunity to participate in the training that teachers are able to take advantage of, and she feels blessed to have been given that opportunity. So both of those educators have done a lot of important reflection and processing, and their stories are available for you all to read on the Root Literacy Design website and by clicking on these links.
And if you click on, if you could open up, actually, I don't know if we need to open it up because I can read it from here. That's fine. So this is the action steps that occur for stage one to be successful. They're mapped out for you. So there's a planning phase, which is looking at the needs of your school. So what knowledge do folks have about literacy? What kind of supports, you can start to map out the supports that might need to be in place. If you have one highly skilled person, you can start to identify that and then see if they're willing to be more involved in the process coming forward. It's good to know how many members of your team are already where you want to be and who you can utilize and how many folks are not yet there. And having a clear vision is important. Brandy and I are diehard Jim Collins fans. And so we know from his extensive research on organizational science that if you don't tell people where you're going and you don't have clear core values and beliefs that guide your purpose, that folks get very confused and lost. And so we followed his work when we were implementing this at the Compass School, and I won't bore you with all the details, but we even now hire by core values and beliefs. And so they need to be things that you have set up in the planning stage so that you can clearly articulate the work ahead. From there, you want to define the roles and responsibilities of your school. So in pertaining to literacy specifically, are you going to have teacher assistants trained? Are they going to help administer assessments? Are they going to help administer RTI groups? Or lead RTI groups, I should say. Are you going to bring in all folks in the content areas? What is that going to look like? Do you have reading specialists? Do you have a coach? What's the role of your principal and your dean? So all of that should be clearly articulated. And the things in blue here are hyperlinked, so they link you to videos and further resources so you can dive in more. Brandy actually already did a blog and a video diving into the literacy responsibility role sheet I'm talking about, so you can click that and learn more. And then you move into building MTSS. So you have to make sure that you have evidence-based screeners and diagnostic assessments because, as we discussed earlier, you don't know what's going on with the children and why they can't read if you do not administer diagnostics and figure out the causes of that. You need assessment framework for your school that outlines all of the assessments and when they're given at which grade levels, and also flow charts for each grade. So Brandy said this briefly earlier, but how do you know to go all the way to the alphabet or not? Well, that's actually mapped out in what's called an assessment flow chart. And so those are what guide folks. So they need that plan in place. And then you need a schedule that allows for this work to occur. And once you have all that in place, then you can prepare to launch. That's when you go to your team and you say, um, you start with why. Why are we going to embark upon this literacy marathon for years to come? And you make sure that they're bought into it and they understand the why they're going to do it. That's a Simon Sinek thing, another one of our people we love. And then you're going to work on establishing a school-wide literacy team so that you can consistently meet and can lead people forward toward the vision. And you have a plan in place for that. And then you begin the work of assessing your students and analyzing the data. And everything moving forward comes from what the students need. And so that is all stage one. And if you look, the orange marker on the page shows you it's 1 to 2 years because all of that work takes 1 to 2 years. So some schools do it in one, and some schools will need two.
And one of the challenges is, of course, it's building the plane while flying it experience, which is what most of education is. If we could do everything in the summer and be fully prepared and ready to launch in the new school year, that would be amazing. So there's a certain amount of being content with isn't the right language, but coming to terms with we're going to keep doing what we're doing while we're building this new vision at the same time because something has to be going on. But then once you get that vision built, it's about continuing to come back to it as teachers will try to go back to original practices because every human goes back to things that are comfortable. And so everything that you build in stage one becomes your rock and your anchor that you bring them back to and say, I know it would be so much more comfortable if we just went back to doing things how we used to do. But we know that that didn't serve students. And we know that because we have this alphabet sheet with a whole bunch of errors in it. And so we're going to come back to our why and we're going to look at this vision together. And I'm going to continue to quote you when you said these things in these meetings in the stage one part. And so I can't emphasize enough how important it is to really do a thoughtful and thorough process with this and not just generate a bunch of documentation, but really use this as an opportunity to create buy-in. Right, so this is a picture of the Compass School staff and I working to create buy-in. There's a lot of, I do a lot of figures and drawings and things like that on there. But one of the things that if you were looking at this group and you knew the team, you would notice is that this is a pretty broad spectrum of educators. It's K through 8 in this room. It's some people that are more content specific. Our special educators are in the room as well. And just recognizing that there are certain experiences that might live best in a committee setting with a couple of point people that are really going to spearhead the work. But then there's so much work that is a whole group coming back to this is what we do together. It's not that group over there. It's not the younger, lower school teachers. It's all of us together doing this work. So whenever possible, documenting those moments, even with pictures like this of like, does everybody remember when we were there? That was an August PD of blah, blah, blah year. So that you have these shared experiences that can help forge the path forward. All right, so once you get out of stage one, it's very exciting to move into stage two, which is establishing the foundational literacy structure and elements to it. It has three key parts: curriculum and instruction alignment, professional learning, and progress monitoring. Heather, would you walk us through these?
Yes. So this is what a lot of curriculum companies call a foundational literacy skills block, which is different from the knowledge block. This is the work that reading specialists are doing with students. Some people call it phonics or know it as phonics, although it's much more than just that. But essentially what's happening is you want to make sure that students are learning how to read and spell words. And then once they know how to do that, they can start to access content and curriculum, beyond, and they can dive into comprehension. But if students cannot actually read or spell words, then it's going to be very difficult or impossible for them to be able to move forward in their school journey successfully. And so this is the part where folks get have a lot of questions for me and start to wonder, does this exist in a high school or does this exist in a middle school? And the answer is yes, because we know that you have to teach people how to read and spell words first before you go into comprehension. And so we need to have a path for that. You need to have curriculum set up. You need to train folks who are going to be the ones that are actually doing this work. How many of the students need it? That's coming from, the end of stage one, assessing your students. If you have 80 ninth graders who are found to be in high need of support for reading and spelling words, and you have one reading specialist, that's not going to work out. And so it's really important to start to build what Brandy and I call the literacy navy. And that means that you have all hands on deck as much as possible. And so you might, this stage says up to 3 years. Year one might be training folks, say, hey, we have 80 students who need help. And so then it might be training folks. How many people do we need? We need 5 people. We need 8 people. We need 10 people. Okay, great. Who are they? When is the instruction going to happen? What curriculum are they going to be using? And so you start planning all of that out, which shapes the professional learning and the selection of curriculum and all of that. And then they need coaching support. It's usually about a year of coaching support for people. You can't just buy curriculum, give them a training, put it in their hands, and then think that they're just going to know what to do. So that's a big piece of confusion that I find with school leaders. They often come to me and they say, I'm so confused. We just dropped thousands of dollars on this training for people. And it doesn't matter what the training is, core, letters, aims, mine. Like we all do the same type of thing where we're teaching teachers about the science of reading. And I say yes because they need coaching. And we know that 95% of people need coaching support in order for them to be able to carry new knowledge successfully into the instructional setting. And so that's why this takes up to 3 years to do it well. And there are key pieces such as making sure that school leaders and those who give evaluative feedback and even non-evaluative feedback, such as myself as a coach, I'm not an evaluator, but I'm giving people I'm coaching feedback. You need a tool that shows the path. And, when did I cross the finish line? How do I know how far I have to go? What am I doing well right now? And so part of this is training, like Brandy sat with me for almost an entire year. And we watched people I had been training, such as that teacher Amy I talked about, and she learned how to use this tool and give people feedback. And it became part of the conversations that she had with them during her mid-year evaluations and her end-of-year evaluations. And then when people crossed the finish line and they started to be proficient as, someone able to teach foundational literacy to students, we highlighted them in many ways and celebrated it at staff meetings, in weekend messaging, emails, all kinds of things. So that's going to help move this forward. But that is what happens in this stage. And so for high school, you're still going to have students who don't know how to read and spell words. It just becomes, how many students are there? Who's going to help them? When is it occurring in the schedule? And it's not that the work is not there, it just might appear differently in that it's not happening in tier one anymore, like it did in K to two. So now it has to be a tier two or a tier three thing, which is usually a pullout setting. And that's what tends to make it feel pretty difficult for folks, but very much needed still.
And one of the things that I would highlight on this sheet that, in my opinion, was one of the most transformational was the classroom observation look for tool that we developed. When I'm just using the general generic, you're on the ride eval system, here's the professional practice observation tool that can be used for observing in PE all the way through a math class, all the way through a history class. That observation tool is so broad that any quality instruction can fall into it, even if it isn't part of this focused, targeted work that we're seeking to do in the foundational literacy. So when we switched up the tools that we were using to give people feedback, that became clear of like, we're not just kind of doing this ish. We're all in, and I'm looking for these very specific points, and I want to see them in the lesson. And if I didn't see it all in today's snapshot, that's okay. I'll come back. And really just putting it out there of like, I can't wait to see all of these different pieces being implemented in your classroom and being able to give very specific feedback related to that. Once that happens, there's recognition of, oh, the administration knows this stuff too. And that's only possible from having the opportunity to do it again and again, and for administrators to get feedback in it. And it requires us, a lot of times administrators, we fall into the zone of like, we're a generalist. We know a little bit about all of the things and nothing about any one specific thing, really. Um, but for me, it was the shift of nope, I'm going to learn about morphemes and I'm going to learn about the proper way to tap it out and these things so that I can give feedback in that really targeted way. And in that process, sometimes I would mess it up. And the very generous and gracious teachers would say, Brenda, you gave me credit for this thing, but actually, this evidence belongs in this other block. And I said, thank you so much for teaching me about that. Look, we are all learning so much in this process. But it really, both on the educator and the administrator side of this work, it is really you just have to hop on and start pedaling kind of thing. You can't learn how to ride a bike by studying about it. You got to get on and you've got to take off the training wheels and just attempt to ride on that two-wheeler. And the same is true for both teaching the science of reading and supervising and coaching for it.
Yep, and I don't want to scare people by saying, you did that for a year with me. So I would say that within a year, you and I sat together maybe 5 or 6 times and filled it out watching teachers. And then we hit a point where you started sending, I think, one observation a week to me. Is that
Yep,
right? And you might have done that for 2 months. Is that sound accurate?
it does.
So it's very doable. Brandy's a very smart cookie, but I think she she was brand new to literacy like all of you, and she cannot articulate things specifically like the teachers doing it can and like I can, but the goal was for her to be able to recognize what's happening in the lesson, to know if there's a piece missing. Um, if the teacher was not guiding students to identify sounds, like she knows that's a flag now. And she can still come to me and come to, different teachers and continue to learn. But she by no means has to be an expert in this. She just, like she said, had to dive in and be willing to start to learn what to look for.
And so later, when we introduce the free resources page, that's something that I would flag for folks to make sure that you click on the link that's both available in this guide and on the free resources website, because that is a very specific action item that can become part of the administrator's weekly schedule. It can help inform conversations when the administrator is meeting with the coach to better align and articulate on those pieces.
Right.
All right.
Oh, actually, can we click that link and show them the tool really quickly since we talked
I
about
would
it so much? So if you
I
go,
would love to. I think I accidentally double clicked
that's okay.
and
That's the guide that they're all going to get. Yep, if we click there. And then this is where you find it on the website. Foundational Literacy Feedback Tool. So just the only thing I want to mention, when you click it, you'll get your own copy, which is so great. So you can do whatever you want to it. You can write in it and so if you scroll down to the second page here. So the only question I get from folks is this curriculum specific? And the answer is no. So the brain learns to read how it learns to read. The materials that you use for that differ. Different companies produce those materials, but this is the science of what we know has to happen in lessons, regardless of what company's tools you're using. And so, if you, for example, if we look at phonological and phonemic awareness, you might be saying, I don't know what that means. That's so great. Brandy didn't know 4 years ago either. But now she knows certain things to look for. Um, so if your teachers are using a curriculum, for example, that does not have that, that is a problem. And it's so great that this tool can be used to flag that for you of like, oh, I know that this is a thing that's needed. I'm not seeing it, or the teachers aren't seeing it. So what do we do about it? And that's where, you can work with a specialist to try to find supplemental materials to supplement the curriculum, or you might decide this curriculum isn't for us. We might want to try a different one that has all these things in it, because there are curriculum that do. And so, just flagging that this can be used for any curriculum, and this can be used K to 12 because it can work in a kindergarten classroom for tier one and a tier three setting for an 11th grader. It's the same things that are happening for them.
One of the ways that I use this tool, I always have it up and active during the observation. Anytime that I see something, like when I see the card drill happening, I'll go ahead and highlight and bold it. And that way the teacher knows that I saw that in that moment. And then in the notes section is where I'm always doing direct quotes in that section, or just noting things in really observational way. It's an interesting piece where, because the column on the right has such specific things that you're looking for, like those are the look floors. So once you bold them, they happened. You don't have to say, I observed a card drill. You've already highlighted it. Instead, you use the note section to capture any of the evidence that's happening, that are the things that teachers and students are saying that help inform it. And by doing that in that quote way, it made it really easy for Heather and I to then be able to debrief it later on. And it was almost as if she were there, because I was able to capture so much of it in the behaviors through the dialogue.
Yes. So this thing has been tested for 3 years. We're on year three of using that, I think.
I think
It,
so.
it's really good. I'm very proud of us.
All right, we'll go to the next page. So these are just some pictures of Compass School classrooms where students and teachers are using root literacy design tools. You see it evident on the boards. These are all different classrooms, and it's present throughout. In this case, you can see even different tapping tools that students have available to them. Behind them, you can see the wall of heart words. You can see a little bit of these pictures here, which I particularly enjoy, where we're trying to capture for students the shape that their mouth should be in, and which teeth we should even see when they're making certain sounds. And it's neat to be able to point to it on the wall and have the whole class suddenly be showing you the different facial expressions that one makes when making the TH sound, for example.
And the top photo is a data day. So, that those still occur all the time. You start to work on those to look at the diagnostic data and figure out student goals, and that's what the teachers are doing there.
Right. All right. So once the foundation has been built with the foundational literacy skills, we're ready to proceed into stage 3, where we're moving the skill building out of just the foundational learning to read and starting to apply it into the content areas. We had so much success with the initial Look First tool. When you start using different observational tools and you make it very clear, I'm looking to see this in every classroom. I'm looking for every teacher to reach proficiency on these. If you're not at proficiency yet, we're going to get you coaching so that you can build to that level. That starts to send really clear messaging to teachers about the priority. They then seek coaching out in a way that maybe they were kind of watching on the sidelines previously, and it inspires them to move forward and become part of the team in that way. And so, since we had so much success through that avenue with stage two, we then applied it to stage three as well. And so the look for tool that we'll show here, again, available in the same spot on the free tools for educators. If you scroll down, we previously accessed the foundational literacy. Now we're going to take a look at the literacy and content feedback tool. And again, you'll see some similar setup elements to it. And then just in this one, we've shifted to not just how to read and spell words. Now we're moving into word recognition and spelling, fluency, vocabulary and morphology, comprehension and writing. And emphasizing that these are skills that regardless of what subject you teach, it's going to come up across the content area. Heather, is there anything that you wanted to particularly highlight here?
The only thing folks get confused on usually is the reading and spelling words part. So it's very different from when you're sitting and teaching a student something like CH says the sound ch, and then you're reading and spelling words with that. That's all happening in the other block, the foundational literacy skills block. So folks often say, well, what does it look like in a content area classroom? Well, in a content area classroom, you're not going to encounter the word chlorophyll, probably, unless you're in a science room. There's certain words that are called academic word, not domain-specific words, sorry, that exist only in certain contents. And so those are the words that we want to make sure that teachers know how to guide students to read and to spell, and they're not just like asking them to memorize the words or that sort of a thing. Morphology is also very important for spelling, and for reading because it's not phonetic. So for example, education is not pronounced education, which would be the case if it were phonetic. If the letters matched the sounds, we would say tion, not shun. So morphemes are everywhere when we're looking at academic language that exists across content areas and when we're looking at content specific words. And so that helps to tie into vocabulary as well. And so it might feel overwhelming, but it's actually just one or two professional development sessions with teachers where you're showing them syllable types, you're showing them some morphemes, you're giving them the tools, you teach them a strategy, and then it's just guiding them and encouraging them to help students break down words in that way. So because we just spent so much time talking about foundational literacy, I want to make sure folks understand that this is bringing it into the content area. It's very different. Other than that, just take a look at the tool and, start to familiarize yourself with what feels a little new to you and what feels really good. But most folks feel like they have more knowledge in this strand than in the other one.
And I appreciate it for the clarity that it offers about the practices that happen at the school. When you're using a tool, and one of the things that you can get credit for on the tool is avoiding practices that are no longer considered best practices. For example, on this one in the fluency section, it says avoids practices such as round robin, popcorn, and popsicle stick reading. That sends a pretty clear message of if you are doing those things, then it's going to show up in the notes, and it's going to be a very objective way to say, like, those are no longer practices that happen within our community. And if you're not sure why, let's have that conversation. But it then takes a lot of element away from like, oh, well, I do this or I don't do that. Instead, it brings it to a we. We at our school have bought into this as our tool, which captures our values and our best practices. And I'm going to give you feedback on how well your practice is aligning with that.
Yep. There's also professional development that occurs when you're rolling all of this stuff out. So I did a staff meeting with folks to help them understand why those are not best practices. And once they understood the why, they were like, I'm never doing that again. It's like, that's so great.
And again, with this professional learning work that we're talking about, it really moves from the direct instruction, attend a training type of zone, and much more into the direct work with a coach, being able to get out into classrooms where it's already happening and seeing what the best practices are in order to be able to spread them. Um, so often we think about what do teachers need in order to be successful, and just like teachers with their students sometimes err too much on the direct instruction side, we do that in professional learning as well. So just being able to kind of recognize that and look for these other strategies that we know are far more effective in our teachers' development. Connected to that is this element of what do you notice about this data, about the impact of coaching? And so we'll just continue to emphasize that whether it is for teachers or administrators, and it's so much the practice that as administrators, we are the coaches. Even when we don't necessarily have expertise in a particular area, we do a quick study and then voila, we're the coaches. But really taking an opportunity to say, like, what do folks need to be successful? Typically, it's coaching. And then, in particular, what do administrators need? It's also coaching. And so, finding the times where it can be peer to peer coaching or utilizing a resource like Root Literacy Design to be able to do administrator coaching. While there is so much value because a teacher, an elementary teacher, when coached well, is going to hit, say, 20 students in a year. Some of you are like, that's funny, it's more like 25. And somebody else is saying, that's funny, it's more like 29. We're going to use 20 just because it's these numbers. And so over 5 years, they're going to hit 100 students. But if you train that administrator to be super knowledgeable in it, then it's the impact of the whole school population potentially in that year, and then multiplied over 5 years and what kind of exponential growth you're able to see there. So again, we think so often of what do our teachers need? What do our reading specialists need? What do our coaches need? But I'll emphasize, what do our administrators need in order to be able to lead this work well? Typically, it's working with a coach or working with a network where they're able to do peer-to-peer learning. Heather,
And
is there anything else that you wanted to emphasize here?
just if we look at the second column, that explains why so many school leaders come to me confused about I had all my teachers take training and I'm not seeing anything different. They're just doing what they always did. We know from meta-analysis work looking at the impact of coaching that, like the second column shows, if you just do training, even if there's demonstration in it and you're showing folks how to do things, there's 0% implementation into the classroom. And even if you do a little bit of practice in the training and give a little bit of feedback, there's 5% implementation in the classroom. And so it's really important, as Brandy said, whatever your role is, whether you're a teacher or a coach yourself, a reading specialist, a school leader, you're not just going to be able to walk into your space and do this on your own, and that's okay. This is hard work, so we need to lean on each other and help one another in this work for sure.
And on the administration side, it has a connection to budget, of course, which is what we're often known for. And we typically can totally see the value in budgeting for the training. And then when we're doing sometimes we call it value engineering, which is a term that I learned when we were doing some construction of, all right, the budget is this, what needs to go in order to make it balance? Often coaching is the piece that goes. But what we're seeing from this work is if you're just doing theory and discussion, demonstration in a training, the impact on the classroom, or even practice and feedback and training, the impact on the classroom is going to be next to nothing. And so you made this financial investment and this more important time investment, capacity investment in your teachers, and yet the yield is zero compared to if you couple that with coaching and support, that's when you'll actually see the investment mature. So just want to continue to plug that it's got to be embedded and it needs to
Right.
be an essential part of anything that we wish to see come to fruition.
And what I really like about this guide is it helps school leaders understand exactly what is going to happen, like in the step-by-step pieces. And so often when working with schools, folks just are like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Um, it's really hard to commit to years of a journey without really understanding everything you're doing within that. So this lays it all out for you very clearly, which is helpful. And I had another point I was going to make, but my mind is losing it, Brandy. So
That's all right. We've got more
you
slides.
said
The
something
show will
so
go
great
on.
that sparked it for me, and I was getting to it, and then I lost it. Oh, I know what it was. So I was gonna say when I meet with school leaders and they're asking me about training and how much time they should dedicate to things, I often just pitch the question, when is coaching gonna occur? And so then, thinking about money and budgeting, there's really no point in holding all this training if you don't have a pathway for coaching to occur. So when Brandy and I meet and chat, we plan out staff meetings. We have once a month dedicated to staff meetings for literacy. It's the first Wednesday of every month. Um, we map out PD days. It's like, oh, we're getting this new curriculum. How much time do we need to help folks understand it? When is the coaching going to occur? The coaching really guides, I would say, the pacing of almost everything we do. Um, I will say to Brandy, I have capacity to coach 3 people right now. It'll take me this amount of time. And that helps us learn, this 10-year pathway. It helps us learn, are we running it? Are we sprinting it? Are we jogging it? Are we walking it? As long as we're on it, we're okay. But it really comes down to don't just do something to check the box. Make sure you are doing it with coaching support to fully implement it well.
Right. All right, so now we've arrived at stage 4, the sustain and expand stage, which is, everybody wishes that they could just run to the end, but now that we've talked through each of these different stages, it's evident why we wouldn't be able to jump right into these things if we hadn't first built the assess and set the direction, establish the foundation, and then doing the literacy in the content area. When we get into this zone, it's about sustaining this for the long term. And we need to keep in mind that there will be turnover from year to year. Even if you have a super committed staff, they retire. And we had a year where we had a lot of shifting and everything. And then it was like, oh, wow. Now we need to hire with literacy in mind. We need to then continue to work on the coaching and onboarding of these new folks and how quickly can we get them up to the same level as the rest of our team. And so even if you are doing incredible work and all of your teachers are trained, planning for the long term means having succession plans in place so that the high quality and high performance of your team can continue regardless of who is in the different roles, because you're planning intentionally for that. We have some tools available for the steps that we've taken to shift our hiring practices. We've changed the questions that we've asked in hiring. We've also shifted with values around even more than ever before, hiring folks with a growth mindset. I would say that our school, just like anybody, sometimes you're looking at a resume and there are elements of how much training people have already had that is so attractive to you, especially as an administrator, when you're looking through and you're like, all right, you've already met this benchmark. That means that's a ton of money that I can save on the training for you in those, and the amount of time that I can save, and the amount of capacity we can continue to harness because people are already coming out of the box ready. But one of the things that we've found is that it's actually far more valuable and faster for us to get somebody who is coming in fresh, but they are open and coachable, and that they're a sponge for all of the different things that we have to offer. And those folks are the ones that we're seeking when we're doing hiring practices, because we know that we can get them up and at the pace of our team more quickly often than folks that maybe have a more rigid mindset around it. Another element is family engagement. And so we're really just beginning to expand into that work now at the Compass School. Once until the work is really strong in the classroom, it's hard to make that bridge to be able to give really concrete information to the families about the practices that they can be doing at home in order to really solidify what's happening during the school day. And that is the next stage. The kids are only with us for a certain amount of time, and then they're often at home. And really, the values in the home and the way that the family approaches literacy, especially through the summer, we know are some of the key parts that are game-changing differences for our kids for the long term. Um, Heather, is there anything else that you wanted to focus on in this stage?
No, I think that's it. I think everything's mapped out there for them. I don't feel like there's confusing pieces I should elaborate on. So,
All right, excellent. So, as we've been saying all throughout, there are a number of free resources that we're offering just as a best practice share. We are fortunate to be part of a community in Rhode Island where science of reading is strong, and there are lots of folks that are hungry for tools in particular that are tried and true and that are being tested in schools that are nearby, and we're neighbors for one another. Similarly, having educators share their stories and their experiences in their classroom. We find great value in those who still have boots on the ground. So for both Heather and I, we do this consulting work and we do best practice sharing, but we are also living this work on a day-to-day basis. And so we are firmly planted in the trenches along with everybody else. And there's a certain value to that compared to those who maybe have moved on from the classroom and haven't been in a classroom in the last 15 years, but they're going to tell you what to do in your classroom or in your school. So we feel proud about being able to bring the tools and bring the learning from the front lines to be able to share them with you. So the resources that I'll just name here and we encourage you to explore are the Daring to Read blog. If you haven't already subscribed to the Root Literacy Design newsletter, we encourage you to do so because then it'll be delivered right to your inbox with the latest blog posts. And again, those are all generated from people who are in the trenches doing the work and sharing the stories out with you, from the classroom teacher to the special educator to the teacher assistant to the school literacy coach to the school administrator. So you're just getting all of these different viewpoints, and they're important not only for the role that you're in because you can identify with that, but also having perspective and understanding from those who are in different roles, so that you can see the journey through their lens as well. We also have a YouTube channel with a number of different resources available. That is where you will be able to find this recording after it is finished, and a number of other tools as well. And I don't know about you, but I have often discovered a particular author or a podcaster, and then I'm just eager to consume anything that they have available as a resource. And that's one of the spots where you can pick up all the latest from literacy design. And finally, the free tools page, we visited that today and we took a look at two of them, but once you go ahead and visit it, you'll see that it's a treasure trove of different resources that again have all been tried and practiced and edited and revised using in Rhode Island classrooms. So we encourage you to check out all of those resources, maybe even start with a commitment to just explore one from each category and see if that's something that you'd like to continue to come back around to as you're getting ready to think about your summer planning and your summer investment in bettering your own skills and learning. However, one of the things that we were talking about is that even if you are gathering as many of those tools and consuming direct knowledge or direct instruction, whether it's live or from an asynchronous recording like this one, in order to actually see the impact to the classroom, it's that coaching element that's so key. Having a place where you can be vulnerable, bring the stories from your experience, get some guidance and some support from others. So often in the school leadership and school administration world, we feel like we're out there leading on our own, and that we don't have the time or the place to even pause to tell or share our story or get guidance from others because we've just got to get to the next thing. So in the same way that we talked about the impact in the classroom potentially being 0% or 5% without that coaching, the same is true for the administrator. And so I feel really fortunate to be able to do this important work and help to lead the Administrator Mentorship Network. We'll be kicking off a cohort this fall, and a lot of it will be real practices, real people from the trenches of school leadership coming together and helping one another improve our school's journey through mutual support, through coaching from me, and through opportunities to really dive into this work with our schools. Heather, is there anything else that you want to add there?
I would say the main thing is this, when we say mentorship, it's really hands-on for you. So it's you walking away with PowerPoint slides completed that you're going to pitch to your team or show in the next staff meeting type of a level of support. It's not just sitting around sharing ideas, it's you leaving with things to actually take with you. And then at the next session, we're asking how it went. And continually guiding and being thought partners the entire time.
Yeah. And we're not starting from scratch. We're coming with templates that we've already used and saying, here, make a copy, personalize it. The idea is that this isn't an extra thing that you need to do, but instead you are saving time that you would have been putting it together and assembling on your own, and you're getting a much more focused and efficient pathway to bring the best resources to your team, and also save your own capacity, because this is a capacity building experience.
Right.
So go
We're
ahead.
here to troubleshoot all the problems that come up with this work or the hurdles. It's exciting. You got a group to talk about it with.
And the main thing that we would talk about is that you do so much work with your staff around understanding the why. A lot of the what is available right in the free resources on our website. We talked about, what do you need? You need this look for tool. Go ahead and get it. What do you need? Oh, you need this classroom observation. You need this template. All of those are available for free. But really, it's the how do you do it? Or I tried this at staff meeting and it didn't go how I was expecting. What were the missing elements? So the Administrator Mentorship Network is really where we talk about the how. And so that's the extension that we're excited to offer to you to help create some change for you and your school.
Yep.
All right. So this again, did you want me to play the video for it, or just highlight that there are videos available that talk about it in more depth?
Yeah, I think that's great. And we'll share the slide deck with all of them as well. So
Great. So
that's
for
a
more
nice
explanation on.
testimonial from Vivi, high school principal. So can hear her journey.
And so in addition, we focus mostly on the administrator side of the coaching work, but through root literacy design, there are also pathways for a practicum for classroom teachers that maybe have taken trainings, whether it was the root literacy design training or another science of reading pathway. And they're looking for that coaching and that practicum. That is an element. And also for your coaches need support and training too. They're often looked to as the people who already know all of the things, but they might have been put in that coach position just because they were particularly strong as a classroom teacher. And somebody came along and said, voila, you also have your reading specialist certification, and now you are a coach. And so giving them a place to be able to really practice and work with one another is essential. So all three of those elements, from the teacher to the coach to the administrator, are available through the cohorts at Root Literacy Design.
Yep. And there's school level support as well, but it's all hyperlinked there. And basically, we're just saying we are here for you. We're not just pitching you this idea. We can actually help you walk this path. And we have multiple ways to do that. So we hope that this feels uplifting to you and not overwhelming, because you're not alone.
All right. And we have reached our last slide and the end of our journey together for this particular session. But we just want to thank you for joining us throughout this last hour and encourage you to visit the Root Literacy Design website so that you can get access to all of those materials that we've talked about today. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.